Dear learners, today I will take a class on rights and duties. After going through this unit, you will be able to define the meaning of rights and duties, identify the kinds of rights and duties, explain the Gandhian view on rights and duties, discuss the concept of casuistry in case of conflict of duties. Dear learners, this unit is being classified into two parts. Let us now discuss the first part, that is video 1. Dear learners, this unit deals with the concept of rights and duties. It discusses the related issues such as meaning and definition of rights and duties, kinds of rights and duties, Gandhian view on rights and duties, and casuistry in case of conflict of duties. This unit specifically attempts to discuss all the related issues from philosophical angle and also equally emphasizes on understanding the issues in a very comprehensive way. Now, dear learners, we'll discuss the meaning of rights and duties. By the word right, we mean moral obligation, which is sanctioned by our society. It can also be asserted as a demand granted to individual by the society for the welfare of all. Therefore, an individual can exercise some rights only in a society. Dear learners, on the other hand, by the term duty, we mean that which is important to someone else. It implies that an individual is bound to do something or is under an obligation to do something. Again, in another sense, duty is a moral debt or moral claim or moral obligation of an individual to the surroundings. Dear learners, man is a social animal. As a social being, man wants to live in a peaceful society by enjoying rights and performing duties at the same time for self-realization. Society concedes or grants to its members moral rights and enforces duties or moral obligation upon individuals for self-realization or own good. As a result, people enjoy these rights which are protected by society. None can violate the moral rights enjoyed by the members of a society. Rather, the rights should be respected by others at the same time. Society punishes those members of society who try to violate others' rights. Therefore, rights and duties are to be viewed with reference to society. A society has conceded to its members certain moral rights. It is our duty to utilize these rights for our own good as well as the betterment of the society. In this context, Green, an idealist philosopher, holds the view that none can claim any right except as a member of society in which some common good is recognized by the members of the society as their own highest good. Dear learners, rights and duties are interconnected to each other. These concepts bring moral obligations. The moral concept, right implies duties and duties implies right. For instance, the student has a right to education. Thus, it is the duty of the teachers to provide education. Again, it is the duty of the student to obey or follow his teacher. So the teachers have a right to the student's obedience. This clearly points out their interdependence and explains that one cannot be discussed without the other. They are activated in the field of society and derive its meaning and significance from the society. It concedes right to individuals and enforces duties upon individuals in order to realize the common good. Therefore, society creates, sustains, maintains, and enforces rights and duties to individuals. This is the meaning of moral rights and duties. Dear learners, rights and duties also can be discussed from another context. If an action is right in a particular context, we should do it, and it is our duty to do it. On the other hand, if an action is wrong, we should not do it. If an action is wrong, we should not do, and it is not our duty to do it. Wrong is opposed to right. Right and wrong are considered in this context the predicates of actions. Dear learners, now we'll discuss the kinds of rights and duties. Each and every individual has some rights and duties, but there are some fundamental rights and duties of every individual. Every man has a right to live. If self-realization is considered the highest good, continuance of life is necessary for self-realization. Right to livelihood is contained in right to life. If a man is deprived of earning bread and butter, he will die. By enjoying the right to live, we should protect our life and also others' life as well. Every man has a right to education. It indicates that none can be deprived from taking education because he /she has a right to education. He /she can take education up to any extent according to his or her capacity. Education can manifest the hidden talents of man. Therefore, it is necessary for self-development, self-expression, and self realization. Right to freedom. Every man has a right to freedom. He or she can enjoy freedom in order to attain the highest good of his life. However, by the concept of freedom, we do not mean to enjoy freedom in any extent. Rather, by the term freedom, we mean restricted freedom. We can enjoy freedom in the sense that we are responsible for doing that work. Right to property. This kind of right follows necessarily from the right to freedom. Self-realization is considered the highest good. If a person is allowed to live, work, and freely exercise his will, then only he will be able to realize the ideal. Personality and property go hand in hand in a definite context. One can realize his personality by using of his own property. In this context, we can take example of a rich man. The right of property has been granted to its members on the basis of equity and justice for realization of the highest good in our society. As for instance, Plato denounced the right of property in an ideal state. According to him, there cannot be private property. Rather, all properties will be considered state properties. On the other hand, Aristotle viewed that in an ideal state, people should use his own property for social good. Again, the capitalistic structure of society views against the private use of property. Although these views are against the right to property, yet the right to property can be considered as a fundamental right as long as humans live in this world. Right to fulfillment of contract is considered an important right. It also can be derived from the right to property. A man has an ownership over his property, so he can exchange or transfer his property ownership to others according to his will. Thus, the right of fulfillment of contract necessarily follows from the right to property. This right was not recognized in the primitive society, but it has significance in a developed society where there will be a provision of third party or a mediator or an authority which will determine the fairness of the contract. The concept of right necessarily brings concept of duties and obligations. Rights without duties are meaningless. All kinds of duties may be deduced from the fundamental duty that every man should realize his rational self. The first duty is to respect our own self and then others as well. We should not kill or harm others and also should not think of committing suicide. Secondly, we have to respect and protect our own freedom. Immanuel Kant, in this context, significantly mentions, treat humanity, whether in thyself or in others, always as an end and never as a means. It beautifully shows that we should not use anybody as a means in order to achieve our personal ends. Our duty to others should be imperative and not conditional. Therefore, the concepts of slavery, exploitation, inequality, and injustice are forbidden because it violates the fundamental duty of man. The third fundamental duty of man is to respect the character of persons. We should not only abstain from doing harm to others, but also observe that they can develop their own self and attain self-realization. The fourth fundamental duty is the respect for property. Right to one's own property will remain as long as we do not engage in taking property of others unlawfully or unscrupulously. As for instance, the famous saying, "Thou shalt not steal," reminds the duty of respect for property. The fifth fundamental duty is to respect the social institutions and social order. Social order is inevitable for moral progress. One should obey the social order for moral progress. The sixth one is to speak the truth. Truth not only means speaking the truth in our day-to-day affair, rather truth should indicate a harmony between thinking and saying and doing. The seventh one deals with one's respect for world harmony. Our duty is to help people irrespective of boundary, language, race, caste, and religion. It will help to think that the world is one family. By performing this duty, we may bring harmony, unity, and peace among people. Indian philosophers like Sri Aurobindo preach human unity, and M.K. Gandhi talked about Tulsidas Gospel or Ramarajya, world brotherhood. On the other hand, Bertrand Russell preached world brotherhood on the basis of reason and philosophy. Now, dear learners, there are some questions for you. You have to read and you have to answer these questions accordingly. The first one is, what do you mean by rights? The second one is, what is duty? Third one is, explain the interconnection between rights and duties. The fourth one is, what do you mean by right to education? Fifth one is, can we enjoy unlimited freedom? So these are the questions you have to ask yourself. Now another important question is, what are the views put forward by Plato and Aristotle for the right to property? Question number 7, what do you mean by duty of respect for world harmony? So these are the questions you have to answer yourself. You have to ask yourself. Now, the highlighting points of this part 1, this video 1. By the word right, we mean moral obligation, which is sanctioned by our society for an individual. On the other hand, by the term duty, we mean that which is important to an individual. It also implies that an individual is bound to do something or is under an obligation to do something. Secondly, society concedes or grants to its members moral rights and enforces duties or moral obligations of an individual for self-realization or own good. As a result, people enjoy these rights which are protected by society. None can violate the moral rights enjoyed by members of society. Rights and duties are interconnected to each other. These concepts bring moral obligations. The moral concept right implies duties and duties implies right. For instance, the student has a right to education. Thus, it is the duty of the teachers to provide education. It is the duty of the student to obey or follow his teacher. So the teachers have a right to the student's obedience. Now, dear learners, to understand or to comprehend the video 1, part 1, you have to study some important books. First one is Zain Sinha's book, A Manual of Ethics. Then second one, Jayapal, The Moral Philosophy of Gandhi, and as Sinha's book, Guide to Ethics. Thank you, dear learners.